policymakers. So a little bit about me. I'm proudly Sri Lankan Tamil, and although they didn't know it at the time, being raised in my chaotic family, that insisted on my connection with language, culture, and community while living in a predominantly white Australia, fundamentally shaped how I approach child protection work today. Okay, so I also want to acknowledge that the land that I call home is the beautiful, unceded, and sovereign land of the Kaurna people. I pay my respects to the ancestors and the elders, past and present, on whose shoulders I stand on in doing this work. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across this land and celebrate the oldest living culture. I have to express my gratitude to the cultural leaders who have generously guided me in this work, and to all of the global, like throughout the global conference, all of the cultural authority that's held in this global space. And to my fellow non-Aboriginal and First Nations colleagues, it's crucial for us to reflect deeply together on the ways in which we excuse, collude, and proliferate the systemic silencing of First Nation voices and participation. It's important for us to learn how to do things differently together. And it's critical to listen and learn from First Nations peoples because there's undeniable evidence growing more and more that this knowledge is incredibly effective for all of us in raising strong and safe children, healing families, empowering individuals and communities, and really restoring our environment. And restorative practice is a framework that I'll be referencing a lot today, and that is steeped in First Nations knowledge. In the words of Natalie Lewis, Queensland Children's Commissioner and proud Gamilla Roy woman, it is not self-determination by proxy if an organisation occupies the seat at the table by displacing children and families from that process. So on that note, today you'll be hearing audio recordings of parents who worked with Safe Start, and I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to these incredible people who shared their stories with us and gave permission for us to use them in different spaces like today, with the hopes that we, as change makers, service providers, as family members in our own rights, can use these voices to make change for other families and children. So our story begins 6 years ago, where following the Nyland Royal Commission into South Australia's child protection system, it was recommended that the government fund an independent non-government organisation to provide intensive family support services in the first 1,000 days. The inquiry found that women were being flagged within child protection early in their pregnancy, but that there were very few specific or targeted services that would proactively share these concerns and then work to address them ahead of the birth of baby. So this naturally increased the rates of statutory removals of infants at birth and in the most distressing circumstances. So it was that Safe Start was born, and our program is funded by the Department for Human Services, and it was originally funded to work in the Western Metropolitan region. And about 2 years ago, we were given additional funding to expand to the inner north. So Safe Start is a mainstream service, and we provide intensive therapeutic case management to support to families expecting a baby or who already have a child under the age of 2, where there have been child protection concerns identified. We're privileged and really proud to be the only non-government intensive family support service dedicated to the first 1,000 days, as all the other Safe Start intensive family support services are delivered by the Department for Human Services. So what you can see on the screen there is basically how our referrals get triaged to us. So at the top, there are a variety of government organisations like the Department for Child Protection, Police, Education and Health, who are usually the first to know when there's a critical incident or a mandatory notification of child protection. And those parties will place their referral into what's the pathway service. And then from there, the Pathways team will triage the information received and work out if a family requires intensive support, and then they refer to the regional provider. So we are one of those providers, and so it's a really narrow access point to an intensive family support service. It can really only come through the Pathways line. However, at Relationships Australia, because we are non-government, our incredible Aboriginal leadership in our organisation insisted that we also have a community pathway directly into our service for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families who they're requesting the support, then we will make a way to open up that service for them, because it avoids the report before support type approach. So at the time when the sort of sector landscape when we first started was that 1 in 4 children who were the subject of an unborn child concern were removed and placed in statutory care before the age of 2. And once in state care, South Australia was trending for the lowest national average for successful reunifications. And this statistic sadly remains today. So it's therefore imperative for us that our program attempt to work with families and other stakeholders to ensure collectively we were mitigating the concerns as early as possible, to prevent the need for the department opening investigation in the first place, so that these babies could grow up safe, and physically safe and emotionally secure with their family. So you can see up there what's our referral criteria and our objective, and I'll just talk you through, I guess, what the early stages of Safe Start is like when we first get a referral. So initially, families don't know that they've been referred to our service because we are receiving our referrals directly from the Pathways line following a critical incident. So we start our process with a cold call and proactively engage families to seek their further participation in the service. Sometimes this can be really quick and easy, and other times it can take up to 4 weeks, where we might need to really proactively go out, do further cold calling, unannounced home visiting, or reaching out to extended family or key stakeholders to assist us in locating and engaging with the parents. In the early part of our process as well, we're using information sharing guidelines to connect up with other service providers and potentially work out who are the family members and key parties who are currently involved in this family's life and whether their role is active, passive, protective, or restrictive. We're just trying to get a lay of the land. And then at our first appointment, when we are able to connect up with a parent, we want to be sharing transparently the concerns that have caused this family to be flagged with the child protection system, and explain that our role as an NGO is to divert that to provide case management and divert them out of child protection responses. So while the referral to our program doesn't require consent, further engagement and progression through the program does require consent, as we are not a statutory body. Our service has at least weekly contact with the family and roughly 4 hours to help, do direct work with family, but also coordinate the extended family and services around baby to form a care team that will ultimately seek to hand over to when we close as part of our sort of step down approach. Our involvement with the family can be anywhere between 6 to 12 months, sometimes longer, depending on the circumstances. So I'm not sure if anybody has seen this image before, and I'm not sure if this is going to work, but if you have, maybe just maybe give me a react so I know that you've seen it before. This is the triangle chart for assessment of children in need and their families from the London Safeguarding Children Procedures and Practice Guidance. And you can see that the central concept is safety, and around safety sits a comprehensive list of life domains and factors that contribute to the holistic picture of the child and their circumstances. And this was pretty much the founding assessment tool back in my statutory child protection days over a decade ago. And since my departure from statutory work, there have been numerous iterations of child protection best practice models. I'm not sure that they use this anymore. In fact, I know that they don't. And there's also been further legislative reforms. But through all these changes, South Australia continues to hold safety as the paramount principle in child protection work. So as you can see from the second image there, that's just a snippet from our legislation. And you can see that the safety is the first and foremost priority. And then in addition to that, the subsequent priorities are that children need to be heard, be loved, and their need for attachment, self-esteem, and achieve their full potential. Now, of course, protection from danger and harm is an undeniable priority, but the positioning of safety as somehow uniquely distinguishable from a child's best interest is where things get really complicated. It wasn't long into our setup of Safe Start back in 2017 that we realised that starting the assessment at the point of safeguarding and promoting welfare for an unborn or 2-year-old was extremely fraught. In the early days, we found ourselves struck and stuck by the enormous variation in opinions regarding baby safety, which often descended into problem-saturated narratives and compliance-driven plans. We ended up spending more time feeling like piggy in the middle, arbitrating between versions of events or who was right and who was wrong, or playing hot potato with who was to blame. And all of this was totally unhelpful, and we needed another way to articulate ourselves, our roles, what we were ultimately trying to achieve, and organising a collective response around baby and uniting parties. So the answer to why we were so stuck when we first started this work, and when we were starting with the risk assessment from a place of safety first, is that risk for an unborn or baby starting from that place doesn't make much attachment sense. Attachment begins in utero, as we all know, and baby cannot exist alone. They are inherently part of a relationship. So the very act of attempting to dissect that infant's safety as somehow separate from their attachment relationship causes an instant schism for that baby. And for the case manager, it's like splitting hairs. Whereas once we started the conversation with a better understanding of who is in baby's world, what do they do for baby, and how are they coping, it repositioned everybody in a circle around baby rather than perpetuating a victim, persecutor, rescuer triangle. So ensued a joining of great minds to help put together a relational practice model for case management and identify tools that would anchor our assessment and case management processes to enriching the connection and the protective attachment behaviors and relationships while addressing the various and numerous psychosocial risk factors. So we had help, obviously, from our executive team with our CEO, Dr. Claire Ralphs, our executive manager, Deb Lockwood, and our RASA Aboriginal leadership with Joe Wilmot and Sarah DeCrea. And then we reached out to some more people to help us. So we reached out to attachment specialists, Professor Jennifer McIntosh and Dr. Anna Booth, and restorative practice and child protection specialist, Paul Nixon. He helped us really refine our model and helped us sort of assemble the tools we needed. And during the early implementation stages, we received extended period of supervision and clinical enrichment support from Jen and Anna, as well as Paul. And to this day, Sarah, as our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander practice lead, but also our incoming executive manager, continues to hold our internal quality assurance and holds us accountable to the fidelity of our practice frameworks. So these are the four pillars of our practice approach. So being transparent about the concerning information and being safety organised and strength-based, working to a shared understanding of danger and harm, but also what is protective and what's a strength. Really holding attachment as central to the whole work that we are trying to do, as central to the objective, inviting baby's voice and participation in the process. And ultimately, the power to make decisions and responsibility to care for baby is placed firmly with family. These plans and our case planning has to be done in a way that makes sense for families. So that's where the restorative practice and the restorative principles played a significant role. And meaningful collaboration with other service providers. We cannot do this work alone. We really do need to create a village, and sometimes working together as services, it takes a restorative practice to make those relationships work really well as well, and that collective effort to support the family and share resources in a coordinated way. So these are our sort of key anchor points in terms of our practice tools. So these are the tools that we incorporated. They're all evidence-based, and notably they're local to Australia. So they help us organise multiple relational and psychosocial factors into a holistic picture of relational safety, which is embedded throughout our case management and creates space for participation and shared decision making. It is uncompromising in positioning the work and the worker towards thinking, wondering, and delighting in baby, and delighting in baby's connection with their parents, as well as extended family playing a crucial role and key services. Sometimes in child protection, it's tempting to try and have families work to a standardized plan, making sure that they go to certain referrals or get certain assessments done. Yeah, I think what we found is that obviously every family is really unique, and trying to work in a very, trying to get standardized outcomes is not really useful. So the value of these for every case manager to use these standardized tools. So we insist that case managers go through and use every single one of these tools, and ask all these questions, and invite participation in these dynamic kinds of ways. So this is the standardized process for us. But the purpose of doing that is to enhance participation and jointly shape our understanding of the problem, so that we can collectively tailor a response that is fit for purpose for that family. So fast forward a couple of years, so about a year or so ago, we decided to ask ourselves, how are we going with this? Like, is this making a difference, and what are our clients saying about it? So we had a little bit of money that came out of an underspend. So we were able to recruit somebody who was independent to the Safe Start case management team, but who could spend time with the team to undertake some interviews and invite families to tell us what they thought of the service. So ultimately, we got about 10 interviews recorded. It was totally voluntary to participate, and those who did, they really wanted to do that because to make a difference, and they wanted us to share their story with people who could influence change for other families. So yeah, we've got consent to share naturally, and with the option to opt out at any time. So you'll hear from two families because these were hour-long interviews, and so I've just picked two families and broken down some of the audio interviews. So the first family you'll hear from, Dad had his own care experience in state care, and as a result was quite estranged from his family, had experienced childhood sexual abuse, and ultimately this led him into a path of being connected and affiliated with organised crime. He had extreme number of alerts for violence, drug trafficking, and weapons, and had 2 previous intervention orders with other intimate partners who he was no longer in relationship with, and he has 2 other kids who he doesn't have a relationship with or any contact. Mum also had some previous child protection concerns, and also had pretty sporadic contact with her older kids. Of note, she was in a highly litigious family law proceeding for custody of her 4-year-old with her ex-partner, with whom she had had extreme violence at the time of their relationship. But due to some allegations of sexual abuse from an older half sibling towards the 4-year-old, which wasn't substantiated and wasn't progressed with, but ultimately ended up being on mum's child protection record. This 4-year-old was, placed with dad. And yeah, again, they were just entering into this very litigious process. And at the point of our referral, mum was pregnant, and there were significant concerns for her well-being, her emotional regulation, and how she was coping. There was heavy drug use of methamphetamines and GHB. There was no reports directly from either party around violence in their relationship, and yet there was lots of police call-outs for concerns around arguments that neighbours were hearing, and as a result of these complaints, they were also on the verge of eviction from home. In fact, they were ultimately evicted, but at the time they were sort of at the point of homelessness. Dad was incarcerated for drug-related offences, and mum had on her sort of referral, it said that she had chronic disengagement and service avoidance. And in fact, this was our second attempt at trying to engage her, as the first time we just could not locate her and couldn't. We weren't able to achieve contact with her. So this was our second go.
Can you tell your story from the beginning and walk me through what it was like to get that first door knock?
Initially, we had a knock at the front door. Two people standing there in front of me kind of was very confronting. I didn't understand what the Safe Start program was. I don't even think I took in the word Safe Start. I just heard Relationships Australia, and they had a report made or brought to them through DCP. So I think as soon as I heard the words DCP, I panicked and I thought, what the hell is going on? And when I get overwhelmed, I stick my head in the sand, and I just didn't really know what to do. So I kind of avoided the service for a while. My partner obviously realised that I had been avoiding when he asked me what was happening with it. I reluctantly told him that I had blocked the numbers from calling, and he wasn't happy about that. So literally the very next day we made contact with our case managers, and that was our first proper encounter where we actually spoke, and I was explained to about how the service works, what supports are offered, what steps to take to move forward to make things better.
So for us, proactive engagement requires truth-telling. We cannot have authentic relationships if we're not prepared to share the information that we're basing our decisions on. It was initially, of course, very tricky to engage this family, largely due to their very real fear of their baby being removed. Yet the persistence of turning up, continuing to make contact, offering the option of participation to both mum and dad, sending text messages, and sort of the unrelenting hope that we will eventually engage, it ultimately did prevail. So while we have a responsibility to share the information contained in child protection notifications, we must remember that they're but a piece of the puzzle. So the first of our tools is the door screening tool, which helps us ask the parent about what they would like to tell us about their sense of safety. And it's really important to know that it is not an assessment. It is not a test. It's constantly amazed me and surprised me how many people tell us deeply important things about their sense of well-being and safety when we make the space for it. And yes, it is okay for clients and families who are filling it out to respond a bit defensively, minimize the concerns, or refuse to respond at the start. This is already giving us really rich information about anything that feels particularly urgent, requires immediate attention, their readiness for change, and the pace that we need to take the work. So it's telling us a lot about how we need to create what we need to do to create a safe space. And it's our responsibility as a case manager to create the space and not be judgmental for how parents show up in it to begin with. It's also really valuable to see how that changes over time. Of course, that's a massive part of what we're tracking to see whether we're making a difference. So part of our supervision of staff is asking what efforts we've made to promote opportunities for participation and notice who we are naturally including, excluding, or even precluding. So in situations where fathers have highly concerning records, such as this father, it's tempting not to include him for fear that it will escalate the risk. While this may be a necessary strategy sometimes, we must also recognise that this places an extraordinary pressure on mothers or the other primary caregiver to shoulder the load, which is equally detrimental. And ultimately, we should not be making that decision without checking it out. So the Doors tool really does offer us something that we can use as an opportunity to just start a conversation and offer it to both parties and demonstrate our genuine curiosity. So restorative practice model for us is our North Star in this work. For each unique family and situation, the above principles are perfectly designed to be robust and adaptable to create the conditions for change and participation. And these principles are that we give power and responsibility to those most affected and seek their participation. We move the decision making as close as possible to the problem and make it about the problem, not the person. We're widening the circle so that we're including as many people as possible to help us better understand the problem and ideally resource the solution. All the while, we are talking about baby. We're noticing baby, sharing what we think is going on for the little one. We're noticing whether there's worrying patterns in baby's development and their communication. Are we noticing patterns of being harsh or mismatched or a bit understimulating for baby? Admittedly, in our really risk-averse world, and when it comes to babies, it is so, we do notice that everyone's worry can get really amplified and it's hugely contagious. So it's our case managers can often feel like they need to have certainty of what they're doing and what the outcome is going to be and confirm that it will never happen again, which drives compliance-driven processes serving to control and restrict decision making. However, the reality is that nothing about raising babies is certain. And what we must strive for, though, is clarity, consistency, connection, and responsibility.
There might have been some tough conversations with your case manager when you first came into our service. Do you feel that it was important that the Safe Start case manager was honest and clear with you when they shared the worries for you and your baby?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That was part of building the trust between each other as well, and to be able to be honest and get to the point where we are today, being able to have that honest conversation with each other. I don't like to sugarcoat things. I don't think you're going to get anywhere with that. And so I think that was really important. There definitely were some tough conversations, but yeah, it was all worth it. And yeah, I feel like it was definitely important.
There might have been.
So going back to my earlier slide about the perils of starting an assessment from the place of safety, equally what kept us on a bit of a hamster wheel of decision fatigue was trying to speak for baby. I have been completely humbled so many times with the capacity of infants to communicate. In fact, they are constantly communicating and they are the masters of working out our patterns as adults. We use Dr. John Condon's maternal antenatal or postnatal attachment scale to mobilize conversations about the quality of the caregiver's emotional bond to the unborn baby or to their baby. And the reason we're focusing on caregiving sensitivity, because it's and when I talk about caregiving sensitivity, I mean the strength and the intensity of the parent's emotional bond to their baby, as this is a core lever in the dynamic process of attachment and offers us a way to tap into the voice of the unborn or baby, and that also helps us drive the case planning process. The ability of a caregiver to feel confident in working out baby's needs, tolerate the constant neediness, identify bids for connection and differentiate them from bids for autonomy and learning, thinking about baby as a person in their own right who experiences the world distinctly and who the parent can hold empathy for, are vital ingredients for protective attachment relationships. And for a parent who has had or currently has barriers that make it hard to do these things, it doesn't mean they've failed or are incapable of learning. It means we know exactly where the attention of the village needs to be. So I really need to stress that this tool is not to be confused with a formal attachment assessment into diagnostic categories of secure, insecure, or disorganized attachment. That is a very specific skill set, and we are not requiring our staff to do this in this role.
Now, I know your baby's probably not at an age they could talk, but if you just...
He disagrees.
Yeah. So what would your baby say has been the biggest change they have noticed about you?
Well, I think he's answered that for you. Is that right? Mummy and Daddy are less stressed? You are mum. You are mum.
So tell her the truth.
No, definitely less stressed out, more relaxed. I mean, we've tried our hardest, even through the worst times, for him not to be exposed to anything. At the start, when things were still really stressful, we'd keep it kind of bottled up. But yeah, we're definitely more relaxed, and he's just progressing. We've got our own accommodation with lots of help from our case manager with support letters to housing places. We've got our own house now. He's now progressed massively, which is awesome for us to see. And yeah, so he's a lot happier. The sleep routine is not quite there right now because teething, but yeah, he's in a really good place. He's crawling, he's happy, wakes up every morning with a big smile on his face.
So during this interview, you can hear that it's all very dynamic, but you're able to hear that both parents, even though this is a really task-focused activity, they're able to split their attention on the interview, but also Dad was in the background, sort of taking control of the caregiving, and but you can hear baby, sort of going through, really reaching out and letting us know that he was bored. This is getting sick of this, and all the while we were seeing Dad respond to that, and Mum also be completely aware of where baby was at all times. And to begin with, this was a journey for this family. So to be able to invite that space, it's a really privilege, and it's a special place to be working in.
Now, I know your baby's
So participation in decision making means we reinforce the responsibility of parents to be their child's protector, that their child is learning through what they see their parents are doing. Participation in decision-making for families that have experienced generational poverty or intergenerational trauma is deeply healing.
Can you tell me about any times that your Safe Start case manager allowed you to share what was important to you and your family before making decisions?
If at any time there was anything that was important that was brought up, she would always bring it up. And yeah, she would kind of bring it up, like, oh, this has kind of been said, or this has happened. Do you want to let me know your side and what's kind of happened? And made me feel comfortable again with anything that, you know, may or may not have happened or anything like that. She didn't make me feel like I had to panic or be worried or anything like that. It was purely to help us give her the information she needed to make things right.
Did you feel like you were given a chance to be able to give your voice?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I felt like that straight away. Like I said, once we built that connection from the start, I felt very, very comfortable to be able to have a conversation, whether it was tough or whether it wasn't. It was just, yeah. Yeah, it was easy.
We have adapted Andrew Turnell's Signs of Safety, which is generously publicly available. And we chose this framework for case planning because it offered the case manager an opportunity to also share reflections of our observations and integrating it together with the family's views. We felt this framework held us accountable to share information fully while inviting thoughts and feedback from parents. It's been our experience that even where the parent refuses or refutes the validity of the concerns being raised, this tool at least allows us to put it openly on the table and work through it transparently. And it also helps people understand, like, you know, what information is being held in systems about them and where a decision is being made from. So orienting a family towards thinking about their own and their child's safety is not only therapeutic, it's a protective factor. But it requires our staff to have an organised state of mind. So Professor Jennifer McIntosh would often say to us that the greatest gift we could give our clients is our organised state of mind and not enter into panic or urgency or, so, you know, being able to co-regulate with a parent. Our safety planning and case planning is informed by this graphic as it tells a whole story of both things that worry us and what's protective, and that which is like just basically unknown and a bit of a complicating factor. Despite the presence of risk and danger, a future state of safety can be imagined. This ability to imagine a future state of safety is what attachment language would call as mentalizing, or the capacity to hold baby in mind. This represents a parent moving from reactivity to responsivity. And family-led decision-making is about families having a voice in what the plan should look like, and ultimately demonstrates the belief that we feel families have the solutions to their own problems and are capable of managing their own problems. We use the restorative mantra of high challenge, high support. So in situations where there are urgent issues or major conflict, we seek to mobilise the people most involved with baby in a family meeting or case conference to help talk about concerning situations or behaviours with dignity, where we create a safe space to care deeply and challenge directly. In these meetings, it is critical for service providers to be able to receive criticism as well as dish it.
When you completed the Signs of Safety case plan, did you feel like you were allowed to share your voice and sharing what your hopes and dreams and what your worries were?
Yeah, definitely. And it actually was really nice for us to do that together as a couple as well. I found the dreams part of it kind of brought us together a little bit closer as well, because it was nice to see the end result is both what we wanted and it was both the same thing.
The next interview you'll hear, we've got a mum. She's Aboriginal and she's a single parent. She's got 4 beautiful children, and they've experienced significant violence with the kids' dad. They've all been terribly impacted by this, and there are considerable mental health concerns, significant loss and grief. And mum is homeless. Mum and the kids ended up being homeless as a result of the violence. And then as a result of being homeless, the kids started to miss out on a whole lot of schooling, which resulted in one of the children not being able to access the assessment sort of support that was happening to diagnose and progress their autism assessment. And so basically, they were just in this sort of downward spiral, and at the time, Mum was heavily using methamphetamines. There were initially active Department of Child Protection involvement, so they were co-working it, and originally they had safety planned the children out of Mum's care and then later returned them with the view to hand over to us. So at this point, Mum was, really, really scared of working with services and had a lot of fear about what she could say at the beginning of our involvement. So they're talking about hopes and dreams. I'll just play this clip and then.
Was it helpful in being able to write down what your dreams and hopes and what your worries were?
It was a bit difficult, I must admit, because you don't ask yourself those things every day, But then again, it was a good activity. Awareness of the importance of, if you focus on your future and all that sort of stuff, you don't have to get bogged down in the day, So it was actually really good doing that. And just also so that me and my worker both know what sort of the plan is if anything happens. And if I'm ever put in an unsafe situation again, I've got some strategies now, what to do, what I feel confident in doing,
So talking about hopes and dreams with someone who has been severely assaulted by a partner, is homeless, using methamphetamines, and is completely overwhelmed by despair and shame, with 4 kids and with, their own significant needs and a baby on the way. Might sound wishy-washy, but this mum reminds us not to take for granted being aspirational and making repeated attempts for hopes and dreams. In the true spirit of restorative practice, this is the act of having high expectations and aspirations for the well-being of children and accordingly matching the support to achieve those dreams.
Was it helpful in being able to write?
Oh, let me just see if So this is now at the part where we're widening the circle and talking about collaboration. And often this can sound really sexy to widen the circle, but it can be hugely stressful for parents. This often requires overcoming deeply held ruptures and narratives about family members or service providers and negotiating with the parents what value they see these parties being able to provide for their baby and for them in the here and now. It's honestly incredible what people can achieve under the most unlikely circumstances when a space is made for them. The case manager can facilitate a space for this process, but really the effort comes from those who show up in it. Out of these family meetings or case conferences and referral processes, we see many parents take their own steps towards trusting others and asking for help. An equally valuable outcome is also when service providers are able to communicate and coordinate their responses to resource and enact a family's plan, working to give it momentum and a pace that is meaningful to baby and the parents alike.
At Safe Start, we provide referrals and information to support services that might be helpful for our clients. What services have you learned of that you can use to support you when you are worried about yourself or the baby?
So we've been referred to some counselling, both of us for child abuse counselling, and we also signed up to have relationship counselling to help us communicate better. I mean, no relationship is perfect, but I think definitely having that support to strengthen that is huge. Also, having our case manager part of, because obviously for CAFS nurses, having them be able to communicate with each other as well and with us together as like a team was really, really helpful as well, yeah.
At Safe Start, we provide referrals.
So in families are given the opportunity to participate and are in the driving seat of the decision making, the referrals to services or resources has a way more meaning and therefore is much more successful. Parents begin the process of healing and there's a felt sense of connection with their baby. They're much more energized and motivated to reconnect to healthy relationships. And increasingly, they see themselves as capable, confident, and active problem solvers in theirs and their kids' lives.
At the work you have done with Safe Start, what has been your proudest moment?
To be honest, when PCP closed their case on us, can that be it? Because that was like a relief. Yeah, and now I think my proudest moment will be next when I get another house. That'll be so good. I'm also feeling really proud of us for getting into OT now. I feel like really optimistic about that because I was like I seen the signs and I was like a bit unsure what to do, where to go, but now that, it's helped us and we've got into KWI and all this is happening, I feel like, okay, this is good, like I'm proud of our progress with that as well because that's something new that we're all going to have to deal with, like, and the family.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I'm just proud of us for already making those steps, and how much more he's going to progress. I can't wait, yeah.
So yeah, this is the special part of this work when we move from blame to responsibility. Now, I can't take any credit for that term because Claire taught me that, being using the term responsibility, and being able to help people understand that that quote is also something that's really special. I can't, I'm not sure. I heard it during Circle of Security training, so I don't know who it's from. And I've tried to find it since as a reference, but not sure. But I love it. You alone can do it, but you cannot do it alone. So often in child protection space, we want people to confess their sins, atone, be punished, or accept all the blame in order to show accountability and insight into what's happened for their children. But I have only ever seen this approach push people further into their compass of shame. Shame is a powerful emotion that we all feel and has held incredible social value since the earliest forms of human life. However, shame when used to punish, ostracize, or isolate is severely detrimental, and restorative practice would call this disintegrative shame. We need to be able to put the problem at the center, not the person. Conversely, accountability within connection and relationships promotes insight and motivation to change behaviors. This is the shame that comes, shame in the eyes of those we love, helps us reconnect to versions of ourselves that strengthen us. And this is reintegrative shame. This is connecting us back to ideas, values, and morals that make you a whole person and calls upon the knowledge that you have capacity to behave differently. Community and culture are naturally healing spaces specifically because they welcome you as a whole person while upholding high expectations for how we treat one another. And this connectedness fosters a sense of personal agency and responsibility.
I don't know how much you know about my background, but a few years ago I got on a heavy substance and I felt like really shit about myself. So being within this service has sort of helped my confidence regain back into the community. Like, feel like a decent community member, you know what I mean? Because initially, like, I am a community person. I grew up in, life. I've done dancing, I've heaps of different stuff. I went off the rails there a little bit, but yeah, just in the recent years, I've been back on track, and with Safe Start's help, I feel like definitely my confidence is coming back heaps. The community's looking at me like a lot better. Like, I feel I get a lot more recognition and respect for who I am. Like, I lost that a little bit, you know what I mean? So yeah, it really helped my confidence back to get back into the community because, being Aboriginal and stuff, like, being a part of the community is a big thing, you know what I mean? To know how you feel as a person, like, yeah. I don't know about other people, but when I'm feeling like I'm not doing too good and not helping my community and not striving for better, I feel like I'm letting them down,
I'll start wrapping up now, and I'll kind of end on this message of hope. So anchoring our conversations in these tools, but and providing frequent opportunities to talk, reflect, and act on connection and feelings towards baby brings baby into the room in every interaction and into the decision making about their safety and well-being. These dynamic relationships with the parents of the little ones allow us to share decisions and power with families rather than doing to, for, or not at all.
Message of hope to another family just starting their journey with Safe Start.
That's gonna make me emotional after everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Take a minute.
So basically, like, I would say have an open mind, be honest and upfront, and really engage with this service because they will care for you. So I've got to say about Safe Start, like Safe Start will like really have your back and be there for you. As much as the more you open up to them, the more they can be there for you to support you. Yeah, I would definitely recommend Safe Start to family members and community members.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience of working with Safe Start today?
Just that it's been really great to have someone there to support along the way, and I'd encourage other people to go to Safe Start as well.
We would like to thank this mother for generously sharing her story with us today. We honour and celebrate her bravery, dedication and love for her children throughout her time with Safe Start.
Okay, so that's me. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for sticking around and listening to my presentation.
Are there any questions? We have some time for questions.
Just trying to.
Well, if there's not any questions, we want to thank you all for joining us. And please fill out this survey that's in the attendance hub so that we can give feedback. And it was formerly in the United States, it was called Partnering for Safety. So yes, same sort of format. So we want to thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day. And for those of you in the United States, good evening or good night to those of you who are.
Yay. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you for joining me. And thank you so much, Amy, for your help today. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Close it.